Welcome to the very first Astropreneurs podcast, an informative half hour for European startups that develop products or services linked to space. My name is Louisa Leroy and I'm the project manager from Astropreneurs located in Belgium. Astropreneurs is an H2020 project supported by the European Commission. Together with several partners across Europe, we are striving to support 150 startups by offering them 50 hours of mentoring. We connect your technology needs with the perfect mentor. So if you're a startup that is looking to become part of the space ecosystem, or you are looking for space technology that was originally developed for space, keep on listening. In this episode, Samwaas will interview Zana Smilga about the opportunities in Earth observation and remote sensing in the Copernicus Incubation Program. Samwaas is the program manager for Space Solutions Belgium, the partnership between Galaxia, EMAC iStart, and Verhaert Masters in Innovation. Zana Smilga manages the Copernicus Incubation Program and Acceleration Program. We record this podcast at the headquarters of Verhaert Masters in Innovation near Antwerp in Belgium. If you don't have much time, please go and visit our website, spacesolutions.be, where you can find all the information concerning all the space-related programs that Verhaert supports.
Today, for our first podcast, we've got a very special guest, Zana Smilga. We'll introduce you later. And the topic of today is opportunities for entrepreneurs with Earth observation or remote sensing. We've got Zana here, who is the expert level, and we've got Louisa, who is actually dealing with all the startups and knows what they have been doing and been saying before. Louisa, this podcast is the first of a series of podcasts in the Astropreneur program. Could you elaborate a little bit on the Astropreneur program for the people that just tune in?
Astropreneurs is a program supported by the European Commission and executed by 6 other partners across Europe. And we strive to support 150 startups that want to deal with space technologies or want to bring in their expertise within the space community. Those startups can apply to Astropreneurs for the support, but what we discovered is that the awareness of space technologies or how to become part of the space tech ecosystem is quite low. So therefore, we had the idea to record several podcasts to increase awareness to the Astropreneurs programs and link it to other programs as well.
Okay, and you say you help startups. How do you exactly help? What is the kind of help people can get?
So yes, most startups that apply to Astropreneurs are very ambitious, but also really young in their business environment. So they need some more form of guidance or mentoring. So we listen to their story and identify their specific needs. Afterwards, we connect their needs with the right mentor that might be suitable.
So they can get mentor support after an application procedure.
Yes, indeed, up to 50 hours. But enough about Astropreneurs. Let's talk about Zana Smilga, about Earth observation, Copernicus, and so on.
Welcome to the studio, Zana.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, everyone else.
For the people that don't know you, I've got a couple of topics here. You work for Verhaert New Products and Services. You run the Copernicus Incubation Program. You're also running the Copernicus Acceleration Program. I think you're working for about 10 years as a senior innovation consultant in the company Verhaert. And before you did also quite some innovation-related topics.
Yeah, that's correct. 10 years business consultancy, 10 years innovation consultancy, and currently very interesting things with Copernicus, different programs, different industries.
So happy to have you in the studio. So let's dive in the topic of today, where we actually focus more on how we can support entrepreneurs that are dealing with or want to deal with Earth observation or remote sensing. So, within the Copernicus Incubation Program, you've selected now already how many startups?
In fact, we have selected, if I'm not wrong, almost 40 winners in the last 2 years. We started the program in January 2018. and we've done, I think, 5 selection rounds. And in those 5 selection rounds, we've selected almost 40 startups.
Okay, so that means you've got a lot of experience in what are the good things, the bad things, what should people do, how can they submit a successful application. So what can we learn from them?
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that in the incubation program, which is one of the programs I'm involved in, we look for startups that have reached a certain maturity level already. We call them investment-ready startups. So they have passed the stage of formulating the idea and the business proposition. They have formed the team and they're ready to enter the market. They're ready to develop their first service, their first product, and actually try selling it, try to get their first customers. Those are kind of startups we look for in our program. So a certain maturity level.
So apart from a certain maturity level, what else should they definitely have to be a winner within your program?
Yeah, sure. I have several tips for all startups that approach me with this question, and I see the same kind of patterns coming back in every round. And one of the typical mistakes I've noticed is that the technology-intensive startups, they have a very strong technology and they have focused to develop different functionalities and performance levels, but they forget to do the problem-solution fit. How does that technology solve a particular problem in market? And who has that problem? So what is exactly the solution that they develop with their technology? Not what technology they have, but what is the solution enabled by technology?
Okay, so I think product solution fit, I've heard many people talking about that, but what does it exactly mean and how do you get a good product solution fit?
Okay, I think a lot of startups start with the technology. So you understand what is your technology and what can you do, but then you link in the back who will be using my technology and how will that user be using your technology. So you identify, first of all, who is your user. Is it a farmer? Is it a company experimenting with different types of seeds? Is it a government that wants to control farmers? Is it a retailer who wants to control his suppliers, being farmers and agricultural suppliers? Basically, who is a user and how is he going to use your technology? And if you know who is a user, you can already figure out what are his problems and why does he need a solution. Is it because he's struggling with a lot of uncertainty related to forecasting yield or harvest time, or managing the risks and diseases? What is exactly his problem? If it's a government, it's a totally different kind of problem. Government wants to control agricultural suppliers or farmers, let's put it like that, to understand what exactly are they doing so that they can either tax them correctly or provide the right subsidies. And they don't want to go to every farmer and meet them face to face and check their fields in person, because that costs a lot of time and a lot of money. So that's a kind of a cost-saving solution they are looking for very specific parameters or for very specific insights.
So you need to know the user, you need to have a clear solution for that, something that they really need and solves a problem.
Yeah, and we could say a use case. Basically it drills down to having a use case. Who is going to use it? Why does he use it? And how is he going to use it?
So good product solution fit you need to have mature ID.
And a great team.
And a great team.
I forgot to mention that they need to do the validation on the go. Not that you develop the entire solution and then you launch it and see whether anybody will buy it. You need to collect evidence. You need to interact with your market, and you need it both for the evaluation panels in different programs, because they want to hear that evidence on one hand. On the other hand, you want to build your own confidence that you are developing and building the right thing. So talk to your potential customers, talk to market, talk to your channels. And whenever I see startups going through the journey, I always try to remind them, don't get too busy with your own idea, with your own development track. Just always remember about your customer and about your user, because any development that goes in a wrong direction is costly. So always remember to talk to your potential customers, talk to your potential users, talk to market or channels or resellers, whoever can give you a valuable advice or tip. What does it need to be attractive, desirable? And is there anybody who is willing to pay for that? So the more checks and tests you can do on the way, the more confidence you can have you are going in the right direction. at the same time, we see that any investor or any evaluation expert panel will ask those questions. Do you have any evidence that what you are developing is needed? Is it desired by anyone? And who is going to pay and how much? Those are the questions you can never avoid, even in a very early stage of your development. So just interact with your market as soon as you can.
Indeed. Anything else?
Scalability is another thing that we notice, that a lot of startups start with a solution for a specific customer or for a specific niche or for a specific region, which is great. Obviously, as a startup, you want to start with one lead customer or one lead user to prove your concept and demonstrate the value. But eventually, to make good business, you need to scale it to be able to make much more money. Ideally, we are looking for companies that can scale to a global level, which means that you need to understand how can you scale, how can you access those other markets, how can you adapt your product or service to fit different segments, different customers, and how can you standardize so it's not a project-based business that you need to develop a solution for every customer from scratch.
So scalability is probably both from a technical point of view as also from a potential point of view.
Yeah, both. Yeah, indeed. A technical point of view that you can scale the service, but also go to market, because it's certain kind of reselling channels you need to access, because obviously selling the service also costs money.
So 4 ingredients we have.
We have team. Yes, indeed. We have team. We have problem solution fit. We have scalability. And I think another very important thing is installing the right activities and processes in the company, which is important to understand that you need to develop the product. You need to identify who are your customers and what's your solution, what are the channels, but who is going to sell, who is going to pick up the phone and call the potential customers, and what price are you going to ask? There needs to be a guy with a real business sense and sales skills, the sales guy.
So again, it's your organization and it's a multidisciplinary team.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and not only having the right profiles, but actually people who are ready to take the action.
Okay. Zana, you have been working multiple years as innovation consultants for large companies, for smaller companies. Now you're dealing with startups, supporting them, running those programs. What are the similarities? What are the crossovers? What can they learn from your experience in those large and small companies?
One of the things any company dealing with innovation has to count on the fact that you have to iterate a lot and have a lot of cycles of that. You have to learn from what you do, what mistakes you make, from insights you get on the way. How can you build on that further and be ready to start all over again and again until you have the right thing? It's never a process where you start at the point A and then you build up slowly and finally you have the ideal solution. It's not such a gradual improvement without iterations. It is an iteration in multiple cycles.
So could you say that innovation is the same as learning?
To a certain extent, yes. Obviously, it is learning all the time, because innovation is always a lot of uncertainties, a lot of risks, and you learn on the way about all the uncertainties. You resolve them on the way, and you implement the learning, and you get something better in the next cycle. Yes, you could say so.
Let's now talk about one specific case. I recently had the opportunity to talk to a company called Scalability, located in Germany, and apparently they use Earth observation for precision farming. Basically, it's an app with which farmers can calculate upfront how much fertilizer they need, where pests occur, where to seed, what the soil conditions are, and all based by satellite observations. The farmers can also see, for example, if the soil supports more crops or if they should let the fields rest for a year. So Earth observation actually supports the farmers in their daily business activities, only with one app.
One of the most popular domains currently in Earth observation is agriculture. It has been the pioneering industry, picking up Earth observation and satellite data to improve the productivity. I think those are the examples I can bring today to the table.
Scalability offers more of a broad overview of a farmer's field, but that's not the case for every startup, right?
We know that a lot of startups, they focus on a specific crop because they need to understand the growth model and the growth patterns of that specific crop. And if they understand that, they can correlate it back to the soil conditions and the climate conditions. And then they can do all kinds of simulation models to see and forecast the yield, the productivity, and understand what does it mean in a growth model when a specific index of the crop is at a certain condition. And what they can read, the satellite data, is obviously the vegetation indexes, such as the green part of the veggie, the different colors, the different sizes, even the angle of the green part above the ground, all kinds of things. And obviously for different crops it's different. We have startups in the incubation program that focus on potatoes. Other ones are focusing on vineyards or wheat. It can be a specific focus because in fact it is also about understanding the crop in detail.
I also learned from Solaro that their startup team consists of people from different backgrounds, different specialities. They have a business developer, someone with a chemical background. One person on the team is actually a farmer.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I think there are not that many startups that have that kind of direct collaboration with farmers within the startup itself. Mm-hmm. But I have seen that that's one of the critical aspects, to have a user face that really fits the need of the actual user. In this case, the actual user is a farmer. He needs to understand, what do I see on the screen and how do I activate different functions and how can I eventually use it in my daily job. And if they have a farmer in their team, that's great. That means that they can design user interface that fits perfectly to the needs of his tasks on a daily basis.
So within your experience, Anna, the setup of the team or the disciplines in the team, how important is that?
It's critical. I think if you don't have the right disciplines, you're kind of doomed.
And what are the right disciplines for a startup to be successful?
The right disciplines. I'll start with what you should not do. What are the wrong setup of different disciplines that sometimes happens. We see some startups coming from research world or technical world, and they only have technical disciplines on board, which means that they're really good and excellent in developing the application, developing the technology, but obviously it's not the technology that succeeds in market, it's the solution that succeeds in market. So in a good startup you need both. You need a good technology and you need the technology that actually enables a solution. So you need a user-centered thinking and a business guy who pulls it all together and makes it as a total solution attractive and desirable for the market segment you're trying to put at the center of your business efforts.
Solaro also mentions that they use different Earth observation data sources. They mentioned NASA, but also data from Copernicus, which is European data.
I think, first of all, it's important to understand that there are different kind of satellite fleets up there, and some of them are owned by private companies, and some of them are owned by governments or governmental institutions. And when we talk about Copernicus, that's the most important satellite fleet of Earth observation owned by the European Commission, and it consists of different satellite sets called Sentinels. And that is a data that has been launched by the European Commission and helped to be launched and implemented by the European Space Agency. And that data is available to everyone free of charge. It's open data source that all startups can experiment with, develop their services and use. And NASA, obviously, it's an American organization, and they have their own satellite fleets. And that's a different set of data that can be complementary. So it's absolutely okay if startups say, I use data from some commercial private satellite fleets, and I use some data from Copernicus, the European Commission platform, and I use something from the American platform. Why not? I mean, they can combine data the way that works for them.
So are these data sources where people can get remote sensing data or Earth observation data? Or is there much more to be found?
there is much more. The landscape is much more complex than we would like to. There are a lot of different sources, and then there are several organizations that offer a variety of sources. But it is indeed a little bit searching and understanding what data do you need for your application, what resolution do you need, what time visits do you need, what do you want to get out of the data. Then you know what data source do you need, and then you can look back what satellite fleet can provide you with that. And what are the costs basically associated with that? Because the Copernicus data is free of charge, but obviously commercial companies sell those images.
Yeah.
I think for any startup entering the domain of Earth observation, you need a quick and easy start. And I would suggest that the easiest start is to look at the opportunities offered by the Copernicus program, the European Commission program. They have several organizations, platforms introduced to access data, and they're called DS.
So these are information points where they can get to?
Yes, and there is also a support service available that basically you can explain them what do you need and what are you planning to develop, and they could advise you what kind of Copernicus data or services would be the most suited for your need, for your question. And then the DS obviously is a platform where you download and access the data.
Yeah. Now, allow me to add to that, because of course you hear from a Copernicus point of view, but the program that we're running with Astropreneurs is also exactly to support in that. I mean, Astropreneurs supports with mentoring support, and startups that don't really know where to get the data or which data source to get to. I mean, they could file an application to say, this is my application, this is what I want to do, and I actually need some guidance and support in which is the right or the correct data source. Where do I get the data? I think this is a perfect application for an Astropreneur application, Zana.
Yes, sounds like a great opportunity as an easy start to get ready for the other programs that can offer some other support, including financial support.
Yeah.
Coming back to Solaroid for a moment, the startup using satellite data to make farming more precise, but to improve the application of fertilizer and of seeding and so on. But Zana, are there other applications in agriculture?
Yeah, plenty. There are so many different startups focusing on specific services. It can be very specific. There can be a startup focused on one type of crop and helping farmers to apply nitrogen in the right amount, so there is no waste and no over fertilization. And some startups can develop services that focus on all kinds of fertilizers for all kinds of crops. But that means that they need to have functions to recognize the type of crop and correlate it back to the growth model of that particular crop and the fertilization needs of that crop. So there are all kinds of products next to fertilizer as well. Farmers also need to understand how should they deal with irrigation to have the right amount of water applied to the field. And if we talk about precision farming, different zones of the field might need different amounts of water at different times, and they can see it when they assess the health status of crops and vegetation in that field. Some other farmers are very much interested to simulate the yield and the productivity of their field and even the time of the harvest. For example, vineyard farmers, for them it's very important to harvest grapes in a particular time, because the harvest time and the maturity, or you don't call it the maturity, you call it the ripeness of the grape affects the quality of wine. And obviously in the wine market, if you want to sell your wine as a premium wine for a premium price, it's very important that you harvest your grapes at the optimal time for the optimal or the best quality of wine you can get out of them. So that's a totally different kind of functionality. And then it might not be that you have to harvest those grapes at the same time from the entire field. It might be that in one zone you have to harvest it today, and in another zone it's tomorrow. Because it depends how much sun do they get, how fast do they grow, and basically the ripeness, exact ripeness of grapes.
Okay. Any other domains? Important?
Yeah, let me think. Another interesting application domain is sustainability farming. Obviously, sustainability and organic farming and ecologically friendly practices is very popular these days. And what does it involve for farmers? It means that optimal use of fertilizers, optimal use of water, and the soil condition, all that affects how sustainable the farming is. And with satellite imagery, we can give very specific, very precise advice how to manage those things. Another quite popular is the risk assessment and disease preventive management. With satellite imagery, we can again see the health status of plants, crops, vegetation, and we can identify any risks of diseases and the spread of those diseases, be it a crop field or forest. Any kind of disease that eventually can affect the quality of the ingredients, quality of the crops. So we can have solutions giving alerts on those.
Okay, interesting. Now, I think in the introduction we mentioned that the awareness on Earth observation data is we need to improve. This is why we do this podcast. This is why we talk about it. This is why we do the Astropreneurs program. According to you, Zana, how should we further increase the awareness? I'm sure that in your programs this is also important. What can we do in supporting awareness on remote sensing or Earth observation?
I think there is a very strong community of startups around Earth observation data already. And obviously those startups know quite a lot and they're really advanced. We need to move outside that community and build awareness among startups that are used to deal with data. And know how to work with data and generate insights and generate value for different industries. And Earth observation data is just another source of data they are not familiar with. But for them to add another source of data is much easier than informing startups that are not used to work with data. So I would say the next step would be build a bridge between the startups that deal with data with the Earth observation platforms.
And that is indeed a part of what we are trying to do with the Astropreneurs program. So if you're a data-driven startup, don't hesitate to come up with an idea and apply for mentoring.
Good. I think we've come to the end of our first recording, the first podcast. Zana Smilga, thank you very much for joining us today. Louisa, for helping in the preparation.
I hope that our listeners enjoyed the first podcast and we will keep you informed about new podcasts that will be coming.
Talk to you later.
Until next time.
Thank you for inviting. It has been my pleasure. And have a nice day further, everyone.
It has been a pleasure to having you here.
Hi, this is Louisa again. I would like to thank you for listening all the way to the end of our very first Astropreneurs podcast. Thanks to Zana and Sam for the inspiring interview. You can read more about what Zana is doing with the Copernicus Incubation Program over their website copernicus-incubation.eu. Subscribe to Astropreneurs podcast or contact us at spacesolutions.be. Space Solution Belgium is a partnership of Galaxia Space Innovation, IMEC iStart, and Verhaert Masters in Innovation, where this podcast was recorded. Until next time, bye!